85%, over 85% of the beef sold in this country is sold by four packers, four companies. So those four packers have incredible market influence, and they charge the consumer more and more, and pay the producer less and less, and so they make more and more.
In this day, there is a lot of passion around nature and the land, but I think we all have a similar question of how we are supposed to direct that passion. In this podcast, I try to get people reconnected to the land and better understand what our role as a species is on it. I do this through discussing and having conversations with people who I believe can offer examples, ideas, or information that can better help us figure out the answer to that question. Describe to me what White Oak Pastures is. Like, explain it to the listeners and to me and all that.
White Oak Pastures is our family farm, started by my great-grandfather in 1866, later run by his son, my grandfather, later run by his son, my dad, now run by me. And I've got two adult daughters and their spouses that are helping me run the farm. They're active in the management of the farm. And they've got 5 babies that live on the farm. So we're into the 5th generation and hopeful for the 6th.
Yeah. Nice.
We raise cows, hogs, sheep, goats, rabbits, poultry, and have an organic vegetable garden and pastured eggs. We have a retail store, have a restaurant. We have an order fulfillment center. We ship a lot of our product. It's purchased online. And we ship it UPS and FedEx. We have about 170 employees. We're the largest private employer in this county.
Nice.
I can't brag a lot about how much profit we make. It's profitable. It's not a good return on investment, but the business is profitable.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of the fact that we have improved our land so dramatically that it brought my family another generation back. We are happy about the welfare of our animals. We're vertically integrated. We have a red meat processing plant, a slaughter plant, and a poultry slaughter plant. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice. That's a good, full circle business thing there. I think there's a lot of things that are impressive to me about what you guys are doing. One of the things for me is how many generations you have going on the property there. Around here in Wisconsin, there's not many 5th or 6th generation farms left. And that's something to me that's pretty impressive about your farm.
It's something we're very proud of. And there are not many farms here that are that many generations. It was made easier for us. My dad was an only child, and I'm an only child. I've got 3 daughters, 2 of whom are back on the farm. And I think that where farm families go wrong, I'm sure I can be criticized for saying this, is that they take the position, well, I've got 7 children and I love them all equally, so I'm leaving everybody 1/7 of the farm.
Yeah.
And that renders it economically impossible for 1 or 2 of them to come back. People want their share, understandably. And that just, the old European way was to leave the estate to the eldest son in its entirety. And I think the eldest son part was a cop-out. I think that was to keep parents from having to choose who got it. But leaving it all to one or to a smaller number of people who are really interested in the estate, I think has a lot of merit.
Yeah. But yeah, kind of as you were saying, in some situations, when I look at our farm and passing it down through the generations, we have 10 different siblings. Or I have 10 different siblings. It's 11 kids. And it's like each one of them would love to be like super invested on the property and stuff. But for like whatever reason, not all of them are. So it's like, it's a tricky situation where it's like passing it down. Do we just give it to the 3 that are, but like all of them would love to be super invested in it, you know? So it's like socially, there can be a lot of different dynamics there that kind of just make it hard, you know?
I didn't say it was easy, but it worked that way. It worked that way for centuries. And we've gotten away from it, but it might not have been a bad idea.
Yeah, definitely. You just came out with a book, right?
About over a year ago. Yeah.
Over a year ago.
A bold return to giving a damn.
I love that name. Yeah, talk about that a little bit. Like what were you trying to convey in that book?
You know, I never aspired to write a book. I was contacted by agents for Random House. I guess they're scouts that look for people to recruit them to do those stories. And I told them on the initial call, I can't do that. You know, I graduated from the University of Georgia with a degree in animal science and the College of Agriculture, and I never read many books. I certainly not prepared to write one. But they found a young woman, very talented young woman, Amy Lee Graben is her name, from California, and she took on the task of writing the book for me. We spent countless hours together and on the phone, and the book came out, and it sounded to me like I wrote it, but I couldn't have written it without her help.
Yeah, right. So she kind of just like conveyed the story from your words, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. She. We say it is truly ridiculous how much time we spent.
Yeah.
With me conveying to her the story about White Oak Pastures, and she was a great listener, great writer. I think she did a fantastic job. I know others know more about the literary world than I do. So I think she did a great job.
Yeah, that's cool. So then
if it's good, she gets the credit. If it's not good, I'll take the
blame. Yeah. What is kind of like the story of White Oak Pastures then? Like throughout the generations, that's kind of a big question, but kind of just give us like an overlay of what that kind of looks like.
Well, of course, it's just 300 or so pages of books, so we can't do it on this call. But I think probably the principal story is the way that my grandfather and great-grandfather, who came to this farm in 1866, really operated it as a vertically integrated food system. They raised, as I do, cows, hogs, sheep, goats, poultry, and they slaughtered something every day, 6 days a week. It might be a cow, it might be a couple of hogs, it might be 100 chickens, but they slaughtered something. They and their employees. And they loaded it on a mule-drawn wagon and brought it 2 miles up the road to Bluffton, Georgia. That's a little town I'm sitting in now.
Yeah.
And peddled the meat. There's a boarding house and a hotel, and prominent families that didn't farm. They would sell them. This is before refrigeration, before USDA inspection, before internal combustion engines. I mean, it was set up before, and they made their living doing that, and it was a good enough living. They were able to expand the farm. My dad took over the farm in post-World War II. He was born in 1920, so about 1946 he took over. And he changed the operation dramatically. Under his watch, it became a monocultural cattle operation.
Okay.
And he didn't operate a food chain. He operated a space in the food chain where he bred cows, had calves born, and shipped them to the Midwest to finish. Somebody else finished, somebody else slaughtered, somebody else sold the meat.
He was a piece in the puzzle, per se.
That's exactly right. A link in the chain. And he was very good at it, and he made money. He was successful. And I think, my dad was cowboy and I was cowboy, so we didn't talk much. But I think he was proud of the fact that he was a professional cattleman. Yeah. He knew as much or more than anybody else about raising cattle. He didn't have to know about sheep and goats and hogs and the other things.
Yeah, which it is a hard thing, And
he did. He was good at it and ran the farm that way all his life. I was born in 1954. I never wanted to do anything except run the farm as a linear monocultural cattle operation, just like my dad. I loved it. Right. I went to the University of Georgia. I majored in animal science. Animal science had been animal husbandry. It had become animal science. Mm-hmm. Science and husbandry are very different. One's linear, one's cyclical.
Yep.
I graduated in animal science, and I came back and I ran the business profitably in a very linear monocultural way, just like my dad. Mm-hmm. And it was fine. I enjoyed it for 20 years. And then I didn't enjoy it much anymore. And I started changing it, and it evolved to what it is today, which is very different.
Mm-hmm. And how is it different? Like, you have more different types of animals, right? So you're not just raising one thing.
We have more different types of animals, 10 or so species, and we don't sell live animals. We are vertically integrated. We're not a part of the food chain. We are a tiny little food chain.
Right. Why does that necessarily make more sense from a farming perspective?
Well, I don't know that it makes more sense. Not many people are doing it. It made sense to me. The space I occupied as a monocultural cattleman, the profit margins were shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and we were still profitable. But I felt like we one day were not going to be profitable.
Sure.
And when people started talking about more of a whole foods, grass-fed beef kind of a deal, mm-hmm. I felt like I could do that. And I really underestimated the difficulty. I thought it would be easier than it was. It was not easy, but we survived it, and I'm very glad I did it. My daughters would not have come back if I did what I used to do.
Yeah. Why would they not have come back? Just because they like what it is now more?
Well, they never would have, but to put more hair on it, they would not have they would not have enjoyed the industrial model, the very linear usury model that I was part of. I was raised to run this cattle operation. My daughters were raised like any other little girls born in the 80s. They, dancing lessons and gymnastics and piano lessons and voice lessons and school. Well, they had other interests, and the things that I loved as a kid, they would not have enjoyed.
Sure. You were talking about the profit margins were kind of like shrinking within the beef industry. Why was that happening?
85%, over 85% of the beef sold in this country is sold by four companies. Mm-hmm. So those four packers have incredible market influence, and they charge the consumer more and more and pay the producer less and less, and so they make more and more. And I don't blame them for that. I mean, it's just they're opportunistic, and they're doing what they need, what their shareholders want them to do. That's their job.
Good business.
It's good business, but it's not good business for the cattleman, it's probably not good business for the consumer. So, we have decided to do things differently, and I'm really glad we did. It is not going to get rich quick deal, but it allows me to operate in a way that makes I get a lot more pleasure out of it.
Yeah. Okay. So it's sort of like, it's not quite a monopoly, but they have just a large control over the packaging and selling of the meat.
That's true.
Including the buying.
An oligopoly.
Oligopoly. Yeah.
There's one controller, it's a monopoly. If there's a small number of controllers, it's an oligopoly.
Okay. Yeah. So what's kind of like I mean, another broad question, but what's kind of like a solution to that? Like, is there a way that we can kind of start to fight back against it, you could say?
Well, I think that educating the public so they understand it. I think most consumers don't really understand what you and I are discussing right now. Once they understand it, then the consumer has the greatest weapon in the world. That's their dollar.
Yeah.
And what happens with food production, like most consumer goods, is in the hands of the consumer. I mean, they can buy it or not. And I'll say this: the industrially produced food is cheaper than the food I sell.
Yeah.
In the industrial model, so many of the costs are cast off to others. I live near the Gulf of Mexico. I'm in Georgia, about 100 miles from the Gulf. And there's an area in the Gulf of Mexico that is currently a dead zone. It's called a dead zone. It used to be a thriving oystering area. And it's dead because so much of the chemical fertilizer and pesticide and other agricultural waste washed down the rivers to make it toxic. And that has a great cost. The fact that oystering area now doesn't have any oysters in it has a great cost. That cost is not borne by the chemical company or the fertilizer company or the farmers that used it. That cost is cast out to society.
Yeah.
Species extinction is something I think a lot about. I think that every part of the globe is a biome. It is a independent controlled series of plants and animals and microbes living in symbiotic relationships with each other. And I think that when we farm industrially using pesticides, chemical fertilizers, hormone implants, subtherapeutic antibiotics, these other tools, we cause species to be extinct or endangered, and that changes the ecosystem. It doesn't operate the way it did before that happened. And I can go on and on about. I can talk about it all day, but I just think there's a lot of really negative consequences that occur from the kind of industrial food production that we've been doing since World War II.
Yeah, I've kind of say this a lot to people that I just know and interact with on a daily basis. It's kind of wild to me that we have a global food market. Like people put it on the job of the United States to sell food to other countries, which is like a bigger problem, or a bigger question to ask. But it's like, it is just a wild thing to me that we've arrived at a place where we think it's our job to produce food on this large scale instead of more at like a smaller community level,
You couldn't be more correct. And that wasn't an accident.
Yeah.
Earl Butz was the Secretary of Agriculture a few decades ago, and his saying was "Get big or get out." And we, the United States as a country, put in to be the breadbasket for the world, provide to feed everybody. And that's not the way that was meant to be. There's a lot wrong with that.
Yeah. Earl Butz was governor of Iowa, right? I think.
He was the Secretary of Agriculture. He might have been the governor of Iowa before that.
Yeah, because I hear that name a lot, and I spend a lot of my time next to Iowa, so I go over there quite a lot, and it's definitely Iowa's kind of a unique situation with the amount of like CAFOs they have and like massive acreage of just corn and soybean fields. And it's like, I know a lot of people that live over there in this industry and are trying to like, fight back against those sorts of things. But it's a state that's kind of pointed towards being like the perfect picture of what we shouldn't be doing and what we shouldn't be going for,
Well, that's true, but not just pick on Iowa. There are those areas all over the world, certainly all over the nation. I'm in the area of the country that produces incredible amounts of cotton, corn, and peanuts, and those crops are all, the way we farm them, are all just really horrible for the environment.
Yeah,
a lot of erosion, a lot of groundwater pumped out for irrigation, a lot of tillage, soil depletion, oxidizing the organic matter of the soil, on and on. Just a lot of things that lead to species extinction, as we discussed earlier.
So I think one thing that people kind of ask when they start to hear about this stuff is like, why isn't there sort of like a larger movement of people who are currently farming to start to do this?
So that question is asked a lot, and there's actually a pretty simple answer to it. My friends and neighbors and relatives who farm are farming the way their dad did, the way their granddad did, the way the University of Georgia told them to farm, the way the county agent tells them to farm, the way John Deere tells them to farm, the way the chemical and fertilizer companies, on and on. I mean, everybody is saying this is the way you're supposed to farm.
Yeah.
It didn't just happen. It's been going on, as I said, since World War II. And these people are so committed. These are fine people. These farmers are great people.
Yeah.
Great. I've been critical of them, but I apologize. They're great people, I just tell you. But they are so committed to industrial agriculture, they can't change. A cotton picker costs nearly $1.5 million. Nearly $1.5 million. And it won't do anything but pick cotton. And they own one. And they own part of the cotton gin, and they own interest in the cotton warehouse. And the same is true if they're in the peanut and grain industries. So they're irrevocably economically committed to that industry, that industrial way of producing commodity crops. And they can't afford to get out. They said, I'm not going to do this anymore. What are they going to do with that half paid for $1 million something cotton picker?
Yeah. Can't really sell it, can you?
I'm sorry?
You can't really sell it, can you?
Well, you can resell it. You probably can't get your money back out of it.
Yeah. So it's kind of just like they're stuck in the system, and there's not really a way for them to get themselves out of it, you could say.
I think that's fair. I'm not saying no one will, but I'm saying it's very difficult to. Most of the people I see, I'm an exception, and there's some other exceptions, but most of the people that I see that gravitate towards this kind of farming were not raised to be industrial commodity farmers. I was, Gabe Brown was, there are others, but most of the people that are part of the leadership of this change of the way we produce food were not raised as commodity industrial farmers.
Yeah. Interesting. I think one thing that I don't hear people talk a lot about, well, I talk a decent amount about it on this podcast, but like this style of agriculture has a lot of great benefits towards the land and the quality of food that we produce. But it can also have huge benefits on our communities and the actual people around these farms. Could you talk a little bit about like the influence that your farm has on the community of Buffalo, Georgia?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I talk about it a lot. So I'm sitting in the middle of Bluffton, Georgia right now, this little town, and Bluffton is right in the middle of my farm. And Bluffton was formed in 1815, and it has never had any economy other than the agricultural economy. It's never had a railroad, never had a factory, never had a mill, never had a plant, just a little farming town. And it was quite prosperous, again, until World War II. At that time, my dad changed the way he farmed, as did the other farmers around. And the town was less important than it was. It just economically was not needed as badly. So it declined and declined. And that's not unusual in this country. If you look at towns outside the big urban areas, if it was a farming town, it's probably impoverished.
Yeah, for sure. You see it a lot in Wisconsin right now.
Unless they found something else to do, tourism or some kind of factory or some kind of mill, it became impoverished. Bluffton did. And when I changed the way I farmed, improving the town was not part of the equation. I did it for the land and the animals and for myself. Is what I wanted to do. But my payroll went from having 4 minimum wage employees to having 170 employees that I pay them $120,000 or $30,000 every Friday. And those people, and then they had to have a place to live. So we bought houses and other people did. And this is a nice little town now. We have a very nice, pleasant little town. And that was not part of the equation to improve the town. That just happened accidentally. And I think there are a lot of lessons to be learned there. I've seen a lot of programs through the years to help impoverished rural towns. The fact is that we don't need a lot of help to fix impoverished rural towns. We just need viable farming operations that don't suck the money out of it.
Yeah. Or push other people out as well. Because that's what, in Wisconsin, it's like, if you talk to any dairy farmer in Wisconsin, about like the history of their local area, they'll pretty much all say the same thing of, there used to be like 30 farms down this road, but now there's like 6.
Well, if you think about it, before industrialization, and I'm not saying we go back to this, I'm just telling you the way it was. It was very common to have 40 acres and a mule was a farm.
Yeah.
And so every 40 acres would have had a farmhouse, the farmer there, and his extended family. He may have 4, 5, 6, 8 children, plus maybe a grandmama, granddaddy, or whatever else. So every 40 acres might have had an average of 8 or 10 people living on it.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of people. They didn't live in Bluffton. They didn't live in this town, but this is where they came to shop. They bought. They may not have bought much, but everything they bought, they would have bought in Bluffton. UPS wouldn't, and FedEx weren't available. They couldn't jump in the car and drive to the nearest big city. So the little local economies prospered until agriculture declined, then they became impoverished.
I think part of the equation, it kind of goes back to what you're saying about Earl Butz with like trying to, the whole get big and go home thing, get big or go home. Like, I think in general, outside of just farming, I feel like everyone's kind of just pushed towards this mindset that I need more and more and more and more. and they're never just happy with like what they have, you know, where it just seems like whenever I hear people describe, you know, this sort of lifestyle, it's like you're sort of just like content with what you have and you're like happy with the things you've been given instead of just constantly wanting more and more, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with anything you said. It's a little philosophical for me, and I don't know that I don't know that I'm good at that. But
Yeah.
I do know that since we have de-industrialized, de-commoditized our farm, the community is way better off. I mean, Bluffton, Georgia, is a very nice little town now.
Yeah.
15 years ago, 20 years ago, the only thing you could buy in Bluffton was a stamp, a postage stamp, and you had to get there between 8 and 12 Monday through Friday to do that. And today it's a nice little town. It's tiny, very small town,
Yeah.
but it's very nice.
Yeah, that's great. What's if you had like a couple things you wanted people to take away from what you're doing on your farm, what would those be? What would those things be?
I would like for consumers to pay more attention to the negative unintended consequences of the food production system that's feeding them. I think that if they did that and they could afford it, many of them would shop differently.
Yeah.
And I think that if a significant number of consumers made those kinds of decisions, there would be a number of people to rise to produce it. That's the way business works. You know, when a demand surfaces, entrepreneurs fill it, and I think that could happen.
Kind of just like realizing the real cost behind the food that they're buying. Like I think a lot of people kind of just have this attitude that like food is food, and the whole buying like you get what you pay for doesn't apply to it, but it really does.
It really does, and I'm not saying the food's bad. I'm saying that there are environmental and social damages that come from it that are incredible, and those don't get realized unless people really think about it and look at it and study it. And I'll say this, there are people that can't afford to pay any more for food.
Yeah.
And I hope that somebody produces food cheap enough to feed those people. I don't want anybody to be hungry in the world. But for those of us who can't afford it, there's a better way of doing it than the commodity food situation that feeds most of us today.
Definitely. I would agree with the same thing. Is it can be hard to ask some people like to, not buy the cheap stuff from Walmart necessarily and go and buy from actual farmers. But yeah, it's important for those that can do that to do that. And the more that happens, the more that food will be available to the people that can't pay for it right now,
And soft drinks are not, that's not good, cheap nutrition. It's just not. Most further processed foods are not good, cost-effective nutrition. It's not. That's not. Since the food industry focused on food, it was all about how it tastes and how convenient it is and how cheap it can be. And those are not necessarily the only three things that matter. How healthy for you is it? How damaging to the planet is it? On and on. There's some more noble questions that should be asked.
Yeah, I definitely think like obviously both of them work into it of like, how it benefits us and how it benefits the planet. And I think both of those are just intertwined together for sure. And I think, I think they're one and the same almost, of like it can benefit us equally as it benefits the land and the planet, and It is. I've heard you talk a little bit about like people worrying about like livestock farming and climate change and that relationship there. And I think we kind of think the same of it as it's like you're kind of you're picking on the more conventional route, but once you start to go down the style of farming that you have, you really do get away from the whole negative climate change stuff that's happening with conventional farming, you know?
Well, livestock is called a really bad rap for adversely affecting climate change, and that's true of industrial livestock farms.
Mm-hmm.
The way we raise our livestock here, we actually sequester carbon.
Yeah.
The organic matter in my soil on my farm has gone from 0.5% to 4.5%. I mean, it's just an incredible increase. And all that carbon came from the atmosphere. We didn't add any carbon. That happened through photosynthesis and sequestration.
Yeah. No, it's an incredible system. And then you get like better water retention with that as well, better water quality.
1% organic matter will absorb a 1-inch rainfall. That's about 27,000 gallons of water per acre. Mm-hmm. So if you got 0.5% organic matter, your land will absorb a 0.5 inch of rainfall. If you got 1.5, it'll absorb 4.5 inches of rain. Not if it comes in 30 minutes, but if it's a slow rain.
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of variables with that math, but yeah, there's something to be said there for sure. Nice. I just see like a lot of the knacks that conventional farming has is it's like you kind of just solve it with this style of farming. So I think it's just important for people to kind of realize that. What do you think about like the average age of farmers is getting older and older right now? How do people pass on their farms to new, like selling their farm to someone else, like selling it to newer farmers? Because that's a problem that I hear a lot of is like old farmers kind of just holding on to their properties, Well,
yeah, that's something that worries me. I really believe, I don't think the family farm model is the only way we can do it, but it sure has worked well for many centuries. And we're clearly getting further and further away from that. Mm-hmm. So I worry about these lands that are bought by holding companies or entrepreneurs like Bill Gates and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Land is a very peculiar asset. It's a non-depreciating asset. It doesn't appreciate. A car or a house or just about anything you can buy depreciates. It goes from being worth whatever it's worth to eventually almost nothing. Mm-hmm. Land doesn't do that. A non-depreciating asset is land, is precious metals, is jewels, maybe art. I'm not too sure about art.
Yeah.
But they are non-depreciating assets. And they produce, in the case of precious metals and jewels, they produce no return, zero. The only value is joy of ownership, and if the price escalates, as it probably will, historically has done.
Yeah.
Land's a little different. That's true with land, but it also produces a little bit of yield, a little bit of return. Not a lot, not enough, a little bit. If you want to buy a car, a nice car, new car, truck, you go to the bank, they'll finance it for you for 7 years. Mm-hmm. And in that 7 years, it's worn out, probably.
Yeah.
You can buy an acre of land and it'll never wear out, but they still won't finance it for over 20 years. So
at the very least, like it can go down in productivity, but you can always save it. You can always get back.
And if you know what you're doing, you can increase the productivity of it. Mm-hmm. You can make it. Historically, the value has gone up with time, if you know what you're doing, you can do some things to make it worth more. You can increase your organic matter from 0.5% to 5.5%.
Mm-hmm. And that, for most things, is the like measure of productivity, you could say, that the farm is having to a certain point. Yeah. Okay. Well, then I think this is a good place to end this one.
All right. I appreciate your interest in what we do. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on. And make sure to go and check out your book, as well as your guys' website, and check out what you guys are doing over at White Oak Pastures and stuff. So, yeah. Thank you again.
All right. Come see us.
All right, you guys. Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. Friendly reminder, please go and check out our sponsor, Just Landed Lanyards, over on Instagram. They make duck lanyards, dog leashes, binocular slings, and all sorts of things. You can find them on Instagram at Just Landed Lanyards. Follow them, message them what you want, and they're going to get you hooked up. Also, please remember to comment and share this episode with anybody and comment anything. It really is just how creators grow, and I really appreciate it when you guys do it on my stuff, but also make sure to go and do it on all the other people's stuff that you listen to. Thank you guys again for listening to today's episode.